Okay. Hi. Welcome. So this is going to be the first official video in my Harlequin wheel series that I'd like to do. Where if you didn't catch the first one, I rolled a wheel and picked a random book off of my Harlequin bookshelf. A lot of these books, actually most of these books, I'd say like 95% of these books came from a guy on Facebook Marketplace who's selling them for like 10 cents a book, and I bought like the whole lot. And there's like 500 and something books in there. And then I went to another bookstore and I bought a couple more kind of random crazy ones that I found for like 95 cents each. So I would say there's probably like 560 books on that shelf and for the wheel. And I wanted to pick one at random. So I figured the best way to do it would be to spin a random wheel. And the one that I got, you can check the prologue out. It's only a couple minutes long if you want to actually see me roll it. But the book that I pulled was actually a two-in-one book. It was actually one of the bigger books that I actually had available. Most of them are like 200 page, 250 page, small novels. But the one that I rolled was actually a two-in-one, uh, large print book. So this actually ended up being like, I think close to 600 pages or something. Um, I didn't want to start the series with two books in one episode, so I decided to just pick one. The choices were A Second Chance with the Rebel or Her Royal Wedding Wish. I'm actually just now realizing that both of these books were written by Cara Colter. I kind of assumed that they were written by two separate people. Admittedly, I should have looked a little bit harder. I might have noticed that there was only Cara's name on the front of the book. Regardless, I decided to go with the book that came first. It kind of sounded like it was the more interesting of the two, and that's really all I had to base my decision on. I didn't look into the books any more than that. Um, so that was The Second Chance with the Rebel. The back of the book also devoted two paragraphs to Second Chance, whereas her Royal Wedding Wish only got like two whole sentences. So here's the blurb for Second Chance. Anyone in the sleepy lakeside town could see they didn't belong together. Mac was the adventurous outsider with a mysterious past, and Lucy was the wholesome doctor's daughter. Mac's sudden departure just proved the rest of the town right. 7 years later, a Mother's Day gala brings Mac back into Lucy's life, and once again she finds herself charmed by his easy smile. Everything feels different, but the risk of heartbreak is just as strong. But doesn't everyone deserve a second chance at happiness, even herself? And then here's the blurb for her royal wedding wish. Princess Shoshana has followed the royal convention all her life. When she meets Soldier Jake, can she dare to dream of marrying for love? That's it. That's all it gets. So one of these blurbs obviously mattered way more than the other one. So I was gonna just start by kind of going over the two main characters. There's Lucy, which is kind of like she's definitely described as being like the super preppy, or I guess formerly preppy rich girl. Like she was the head of school council and she was like captain of the cheer squad, and her dad is like a really rich dentist, and they live in a small town that's like on a lakeside in BC. So that's how you know they're rich. Whereas Mac is like he grew up right next door in, I guess, like a little shack, raised by his foster mother, Mama Freda. And they had basically no money. So it's definitely like bad boy meets good girl, wrong side of the tracks sort of setup. But they broke up when they were like 18 years old, and Mac left town. And that's kind of their backstory, I guess. That's all you kind of really get to start with. So I'm gonna go into the summary. Just so you're aware, if you plan on reading the book, I'm doing a full plot summary, so there's gonna be a lot of spoilers. So the book opens with Lucy on the phone trying to get a hold of Mac. Though obviously they have some kind of history together, it was a long time ago. Regardless, he hasn't been returning her phone calls, and Lucy ends up telling his secretary that his that that she ends up dropping his foster mother's name in order to get him to answer. Uh, During this whole point, she mentions in the narration that she had been with her fiance, but they had split up. She doesn't really get into the details about it though. Just that she runs a bookstore online, and she's since moved back into her family home on a lakeside in BC. Mac ends up like being most of this narration is actually done through her POV. I find with like a lot of romance novels, it flips back and forth. I'd say like 50-50. It'll be one character's point of view and then it'll switch to the second character's point of view. But the majority of this is actually from Lucy. And from her point of view, Mac is described as a former wild child and roguishly handsome. When his secretary patches her through to him, he immediately calls out Lucy on the fact that she always gets what she wants, even if it's through underhanded methods, like pretending to be somebody else in order to contact somebody on the phone, even though they're clearly trying to avoid her. Mac he even goes as far as to call her the pampered doctor's daughter, the head of student council, and captain of the cheer squad, which kind of paints a pretty obvious picture that this is a opposite side of the tracks, teenage fling sort of setup. She's the rich girl, he's the foster kid who had nothing. They never would have worked, you know. There's a mention in the book that I felt like did a good job of emphasizing the difference between them, even if it's kind of cliche. Uh, it set a good tone for what they were like as teenagers, I guess. The week she had won the spelling bee, he had been kicked out of school for swearing. She got a little Ford Compact for her 16th birthday. Well, he bought an old convertible and stripped the engine in the driveway, then stood down her father when he complained. While she was painting her toenails, he was painstakingly building his own cedar strip canoe in Mama's yard. It comes up in her internal monologue that they used to date when they were 17, 18 years old. He's a year older than she is. But that she ended things with Mac because he was super closed off and he didn't want to tell her his secrets. The reason that she reaches out to him now is because Mama Freda, who is his foster mother, she's sick. She crashed her car, she lost her driver's license, she's been to many doctor's appointments in the last couple months. Lucy found a funeral planning brochure that Mama Freda left out on the kitchen table, and now she's worried that she's dying. So Lucy is holding a Mother's Day gala and is also making a surprise party in honor of Mama Freda, so that she knows the impact she's made on all of her many foster kids. So she tells Mac about all this, and he hasn't been home to see her in years, and Mama Freda misses him. So she wants to make sure that he comes home in time to, see her in case anything should happen and to attend the gala in her honor. In the narration, Lucy mentions that Mama Freda was literally like looking out the window and just lamenting and asking like, "Oh, when will my boy be home?" The setting for this whole book is basically like a super expensive, rich, fancy folk lake house area. It's definitely described as having like big mansions and boats and doctors, lawyers, politicians. There's country clubs, and it's just super, super rich. But then Mama Freda has like this really tiny shack where she fosters the kids. It's run down, it's broken, it doesn't fit in with the locale. And the rich people who live in the area obviously don't like that it's dragging down the property values, I guess you could say. They hate it. They hate it a lot. So the very next day after their phone call, Mac shows up in a goddamn seaplane, flying it himself because he's a cool, rich, badass sports guy now. He runs a athletic company and he makes like canoes and sportswear and stuff like that. And he's rich as hell, obviously. From roguish bad boy to rich as hell bachelor. So Lucy, who's at her parents' house. She's living there now. Her dad's dead, and her mom is, I think, in South Africa or something. So she's just in that house by herself. She's like standing on the back porch, watching Mac land the seaplane. Uh, he lands it on the water, and he goes to tie it down to the dock, but the wood is rotting, and it breaks, and he falls off the seaplane into the water. Lucy rushes out to help him. He climbs out of the water back onto the plane, and he throws her the rope. But she slips on the dock, trying to reach for the rope, and the wood, like, breaks under her, too, and she falls into the water. And then Mac falls into the water again, jumping in to go save her. And he pulls her out of the lake. It's very like it definitely gives me the feeling of like 2000s rom-com. Like it's definitely something I could have seen play out with like Sandra Bullock, you know. After this, Lucy, who is in her PJs, rushes home to go change, and Mac heads into Mama Freida's house to clean up. The POV, the point of view, it switches to Mac from here. Um, this is, I think, like one of maybe three times where he has the point of view. Um, he notices that the house is in disrepair, more than normal anyway. There were clear attempts to fix it up, like the rotting deck has boards put over it. The leaky sink has had like cloth wrapped around it. Like somebody's been trying to fix these things up. And Mama tells him that Lucy was doing it, that she's been helping out around the home, she's been driving her to appointments, like she's just been taking care of her. This is something that Mac didn't really expect from her, because he thought she would be like too far above that kind of thing. But here she is. She's like been mowing Mama's lawn and doing her cleaning and everything. Whereas when she was a teenager, like she had staff at the house who did all that kind of things for her. Like he recalls a memory where she's sitting on the back porch painting her toenails with all of her preppy rich friends and hanging out while like they have staff mowing the lawn for her and stuff like that. So Mama sends him over to Lucy's house with the elixir, which is basically just like an alcohol, a bad alcohol that she insists will help Lucy and keep her from getting sick because she got all soaked jumping into the cold lake. When Mac goes over there, he notices that she's got racks set up on the dock and she's been renting out canoes basically. It's not something he would think that she'd do, or want to do, because obviously renting out canoes like that would bring a bunch of tourists to their rich neighborhood and have just randos hanging out on the beach and stuff like that. He also notices that she was swatching colors on the side of the house. She's got like an array of different purple shades up. And he was kind of surprised by that too, because doing something like that would obviously make the house stand out from the crowd, which is like something I guess you wouldn't expect from a rich person, which I think is kind of ridiculous because I've driven through some rich people neighborhoods in the city where I live, and some of those houses are just the most obnoxious, wild ass houses I've ever seen. Like they'll be painted just bright colors or all black. They have like these huge weird shapes or the spires. Like it's like they're trying to outdo each other. Um, and then painting your house like lilac or lavender does not seem quite as crazy, I guess. Mac ends up stealing one of the rental canoes that she has on the dock, and he takes it out into the lake and kind of paddles around and, reflects on his memories of when he used to live around here. When he does get back to the shore, she comes out of the house and she gets mad at him and tells him like he shouldn't be going out without anybody knowing that he's out there, because what if he drowned and, gets into bad spots, stuff like that. Um, they have like a really brief back and forth. It kind of feels like the author Cara is trying to go for almost enemies to lovers, but she doesn't really commit like hard enough to the fuck you, you suck, I hate you so much that you really want from a good enemies to lovers story. Mac is still skulking around the property even after he and Lucy part ways for the night, but he overhears somebody at the front door, and when he kind of starts listening in, he finds that a lady named Claudia is there. Claudia is like a former classmate of Lucy's and was like her BFF when they were in high school, but they're definitely not friends anymore because Claudia tells Lucy that the country club where she spends a lot of her time, Lucy's not a part of the club anymore. Uh, the country club is not going to the country club does not approve of the fact that she's painting her house purple, and that the country club was going to host the gala for Mama Freda, but they've suddenly realized they can't do that. They're overbooked now. They're not going to do that. Even though Lucy's already sent out the invite, she's already gotten RSVPs, like she's already set the date and everything. Mac realizes that Lucy kind of got kicked out of the country club for some reason, but he's not really sure why. and she's obviously not a part of the rich preppy squad like she used to be. Mac kind of comes out of nowhere, starts talking to Claudia, and when they were teenagers, Claudia used to be like, "You gross, like poor kids. I don't want to associate with a poor kid." I mean, not in those exact words, but you know what I mean. And when she sees Mac, she's suddenly like so happy to see him. She mentions, "Oh, he's so successful now. He's making all that money. Her rich preppy kids love his clothing line and they all wear it." And while he's trying to like talk to Claudia, Lucy is standing over Claudia's shoulder like pretending to strangle herself. Like it's a cute little fun exchange. Um by the time Claudia leaves, Mac is kind of, I would say, upset that his company's clothing brand is popular amongst the rich kid crowd. And what he ends up doing is making a huge donation of the clothes from his company to like the shelters and places that help people in need in the area. And he says that the donation is from the country club. So all these places get a donation of fancy clothes from the country club, and they put out an ad on the radio to like thank the country club for their huge donation or whatever. And then I think like in the next couple days the country club calls Lucy because I guess they know where the donation came from, and they're like, "Actually, we changed our mind. We'd love to have your gala here. We're very sorry, you know." I don't quite understand what they're getting at with this, but I guess the forced donation in their name convinced them to hold the gala that Lucy wanted to. In Mac's POV, we find out that Lucy's father had threatened him when he was a teenager. He said he would pin break ins and robberies on him if he didn't leave town, so ultimately that was why Mac decided he needed to leave. He didn't really fit in there anyway. He didn't ask Lucy to go with him because he didn't want to separate her from the life she knew. And Lucy broke up with him because he was leaving and he wasn't really. It's mentioned that he was basically not opening up to her, and she took it poorly, I guess. And I believe when they broke up, she said something along the lines of, "This is why I could never love someone like you," which he took to mean that she couldn't love him because he was poor, and she had meant it in the way that she couldn't love somebody who wouldn't confide in her. In the next day or so, Mac shows up at Lucy's house again, and he tells her he's going into town to get snacks and a movie so he can have a movie night with Mama. He also tells her that Mama insisted Lucy go shopping with him because she would know better than he would what movies to get, because he would just get like some shitty action movies and make her watch them. So they head into town together and they have like a really cute bonding moment where they're grocery shopping together and playing around. And they're both obviously having a really good time. They make bets on like whether or not he can find something she's never heard of in the store. She loses. And then Lucy joins Mac and Mama for the movie. That's kind of just happens naturally. It's just kind of expected that she'll join them. Like midway through the movie, Mama gets up and leaves, says she's tired and needs to go rest, and she just leaves Mac and Lucy alone. And it's kind of given me the feeling like the entire time that this whole thing was like a scheme on Mama's part to get them together. Like she's like, "I've had enough waiting. I'm gonna get these two together because obviously they have feelings for each other." And getting up to leave in the middle of the movie was one of those points that kind of confirmed it for me. After the movie, Mac and Lucy walk back to her house together. Like they're right next door, so it's not a super long walk. But she turns around and she just like super impulsively kisses him. And she mentions in her narration that she was just kind of curious about it. She wonders if it would feel like it did when they were teenagers, and it's not entirely surprising to find out that it does, and it's great. And she missed it. And then Lucy turns around and gets mad at him. Well, she gets mad at herself that she liked it, and she storms off because she wasn't supposed to like it. This was supposed to be like her "see, I'm over it" moment, but she's not over it. Mac turns around and goes home, and Mom is out of her room again. and they talk a little bit, and he says that he loves her, and she says she knows, even though he's never said it out loud. Um, it's definitely been a recurring theme with Mac that he's just not open about his feelings at all. Mac asks Mama, like just straight up, if she's gonna die, and Mama's answer is that yes, well, we're all dying though, sooner or later, which is grim, but it doesn't really confirm if she's actually terminal, like Lucy was kind of implying, like she kind of implied herself by leaving that brochure out on the table. The next day, Mac finds a tandem bike in the shed, cleans it up a bit, and brings it over to Lucy's, and informs her that since she lost a bet with him last night, she owes him one. They get on the bike, and they take off, and it actually ends up being a great time. They both have fun. Even though they bicker a bunch about who should be in the front or who should be in the back. And they learn the hard way, heading down a hill, that the brakes don't work very well, and they go crashing into some bushes. They get all dirty, she scrapes up her leg, stuff like that. And then when they're all grass stained and dirty, Mac insists they go to the country club to meet up with the rich folk who had been shunning her. Because obviously she's a mess. Lucy says, no, I'm not about to go do that. But Mac drags her along anyway. He's still going like, oh, you owe me though, because you lost your bet yesterday, so we're going. And they end up kind of actually having a good time. They joke around with the rich guys, they hang out. Mac, I guess, turns on the charm, and he ends up convincing the rich folk to get on the bike. And all the rich couples, like, they get on the tandem bike, they take turns riding around, everybody's having fun, they're laughing, clapping, and then rich bitch Claudia and her husband are the last ones to get on the bike. Her husband has been day drinking, he's drunk as hell, and they end up going up a hill, and then they start shooting down the hill, and the brakes don't work, and they end up right in the lake again. It's definitely one of those, like, I guess, like, climactic bonding scenes where, the hero and the heroine get together, they're hanging out. It's something you would see in a rom-com for sure. Like, this is still something I would see in like a Sandra Bullock movie. Uh the entire book kind of has that sort of vibe. It's like super low stakes, it's very easy reading. I think the book was 250 pages, large print, so I finished it in no time at all. The weird tensions with the rich guys, they were all formerly Lucy's friends, by the way. All these rich kids, Lucy used to be part of that crowd. Uh, all the tension with them seems to kind of dissipate, and things kind of get back to normal again. Everybody goes on their way, and people go home. The next day, in order to get prepared for the gala, Mac takes Lucy and Mama to the big city, flying his little seaplane off the lake and I think like 2 hours away into the big city. They go out and try on dresses together, and Mac obviously buys the super expensive ones for Mama and for Lucy, and everybody goes home super happy. They kind of joke about what they do for fun, and Lucy won't tell Mac. And I can't remember what he says he does, but I think it's his work, building canoes, stuff like that. Uh, and then I think it might be the next day. I can't remember if it's later that day or it's the next day. Lucy decides to show him what she does for fun. They get in her car and drive off to the hospital. And apparently, her idea of fun is cuddling the preemie and sick babies at the hospital, which, I don't know, seems kind of weird to me, but alright. I mean, a hobby's a hobby, I guess. The book specifically makes mention that there are crack babies there, and I thought it was kind of weird to make that specific point. Like, I don't know. Babies aren't my thing, so the idea of spending hours just going to the hospital and cuddling babies is not really, it does not sound like a fun evening to me at all. But by now the plot has started moving really fast. It seems like the author's kind of rushing to wrap things up, but I've always noticed that that's a problem with short stories. It's like they don't know how to properly pace it out, and maybe about midway to 3/4 of the way through the book, everybody starts rushing. Uh, Mac and Lucy end up having an argument about the fact that Mac had never told her about his life or his feelings when he'd been a teenage boy, and Mac ends up storming off a couple days before Mama's gala. Lucy ends up getting a call from her mother in South Africa, and she tells Lucy that she kind of had an epiphany. Her father was holding her back. He was a terrible guy, and she's so much happier now that he's gone, and she's free to do kind of whatever she wants. And Lucy ends up confessing that she still has feelings for Mac, and her mother just kind of goes like, "Good for you, go for it, be happy, you know, don't let anybody stop you." It's a very abrupt and feels kind of random and just kind of like, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just, it took everything and tied it up into a little bow and just kind of rushed everything along in a way that I think didn't really fit. Mac ends up having a change of heart. He comes rushing back to the lake and in time for Mama's gala. Uh, he meets up with Lucy and he starts telling her like his secrets. Throughout the book, it's come up a couple times that he, when he meets new people, as a kid, he would kind of say the phrase like, I killed a man with my bare hands. And he kind of did it to deter people from getting close to him, I guess. But he confesses to Lucy that his mother and his father had separated, and his dad was really poor and spent all of his time working, while his mother ended up marrying a super rich guy. And what his mother did was she ended up manipulating Mac into leaving his hardworking father's house and coming to live with them and just pampering him, giving him everything he wants. And Mac, who was just a kid at the time, uh, got a bit of an attitude. He became kind of snooty. He thought he was better than, you know, having to deal with his poor father. And one day his father calls him, but Mac ignores the call. And it turns out that his dad was dying of a heart attack, and by not picking up the phone, Mac blames himself for not getting his dad help and ultimately blames himself for his dad's death, which is very heavy. That was a very heavy subject I wasn't expecting. Mac ends up running away from home because he hates his mother, hates what she did to him, and that's how he ended up in foster care with Mama. And that's just kind of just all out there now. It was really heavy for what the rest of the book ended up being. They end up having the gala. Mama's foster kids show up. Everybody has a great time. They're having a blast. There's speeches and love and dancing. And Lucy ends up getting all emotional because it's Mother's Day. And she rushes out of the room, and Mac follows after her. And he kind of starts putting together the pieces of things that she's mentioned before. She's mentioned that she wants to turn her parents' house into a home to care for unwed mothers. And she has mentioned that Mother's Day is a very hard day for her. And uh, he ends up realizing that essentially the summer that they broke up, she had accidentally gotten pregnant. And that's why she kind of got pushed out of the rich, popular crowd, is because everybody shunned her after she got pregnant. But unfortunately, she lost the baby after a couple months, and that was kind of it. She wants to run the house named Caleb after the baby that she lost, and that's her secret. It's kind of been hinted at throughout the whole story. Like, it was not a big surprise. It was not something that was sprung up randomly on me to this point. They both cry, and Mac ends up proposing. And that's the end. It moves into the epilogue, which is a couple years later. They've set up the house for pregnant ladies, and they have like yearly Mother's Day celebrations there. Mac and Lucy are married. Mama Freda is still alive and kicking, and Lucy's pregnant. They mention that Mama Freda has been leaving out her funeral planning brochures again and wishing out loud that she could meet her grandchildren before she dies, which I think is kind of confirming that she's basically just playing them, I guess. She's putting out the funeral brochure to get what she wants. Like, she wants Lucy and Mac to get together, or she wants them to have babies, etc. I don't think I think that's kind of what they were hinting at, is that she's not actually actively dying. She's just kind of manipulating them. But then it ends on a happy note, and everything's okay now. So I've been sitting on this book for about a week before writing out my script and making this video, and I think I enjoyed this book. It's not some super amazing, world changing, I need to tell all my friends to go read it right now sort of experience, but it wasn't a bad book. It definitely left me with a feeling of like summer nostalgia, even though for one, I've definitely never been to a rich lake house neighborhood in BC. It was set on a lake, and the canoeing, the small town vibes, just their youth being a main subject of the book. It was very. I don't even know how to describe it. It was just warm and fuzzy. There was nothing heinously wrong about Mac or Lucy. They're both good people. Nobody betrayed anyone. There was no big conflict or no big evil to fight. It was just a short, quick story. Given that it was a quick read, it took me no time at all to get through. The book was easy to visualize in my head. It was very cinematic at times. It's very much like sitting down to watch a rom-com for an hour. And I mean, the book was read in about the amount of time that it takes to watch a movie too, so that kind of helped. Uh, like there were scenes in the book that played out that would have fit perfectly in the movie, like falling off the dock into the water, the bike, or having a meddling mama character like Mama Freda. It's very easy to see how these kinds of books could get adapted into Hallmark movies. But on that note, like there was nothing super mind-blowing about this plot. It was simple, it was easy, which is both a good and a bad thing. The plot was kind of predictable, and like you could see Lucy, you could guess that Lucy had been secretly pregnant and lost it pretty early on in the book. The I cuddle crack babies for fun thing was kind of weird to me, but like I said, I'm not a baby person, so I'm not the best voice for something like that. The plot, especially by the end, felt super rushed. The conflict was wrapped up in a nice little bow. There wasn't even very much conflict. It was like a misunderstanding at best. Overall, in my rating, I would give this book 3 out of 5 stars. It was inoffensive, but rushed. The simple plot, the basic characters, but there was nothing wrong with it. There was absolutely no spice whatsoever, save for one single kiss, which I always find kind of disappointing, but I mean, I get it. I also find like when I compare my reviews on Goodreads to other people, I might be a little more generous with my stars, I guess. For me, 5 stars is like absolutely amazing. I loved it. I would read it again, and I will make sure all of my friends read it. 4 stars is this book was great. There's probably not absolutely perfect, but it was still amazing. 3 stars is like this book's fine. I like this book. There's no reason I could find to hate this book. It's just it is what it is. It's all right. 2 stars is that I did not like this book, and 1 star is that this book offended me in some way, and I'm mad about it. If I mark a book, DNF did not finish. It could be anything from this book was boring as fuck to I just couldn't read it. I don't have the time or mental capacity right now to read this book. So whether or not I actually read a book or mark it as DNF is not the best way to judge whether or not I liked it. If I hate a book, I'll give it 1 star. As far as spiciness goes in this book, I would give it 1 spicy. There was no spice, none spice in this book. They kissed one time. That was it. Disappointing. I wanted to do something where I kind of mention or keep track of the tropes that I find in these books. Um, so I wanted to kind of list out what I could think of as far as this book went, when the tropes that it had in it. Um, Second chance romance obviously is right in the title. It vaguely felt like the author was trying to do an enemies to lovers bit with the way that Lucy and Mac clashed at the beginning, but it didn't have enough bite in behind it to really feel like effective. There was a secret baby trope, or I guess secret pregnancy. There was the whole stay away from my daughter thing that Mac had to deal with her dad. Their entire relationship started as like a good girl, bad boy, wrong side of the track situation. There was the meddling mama. There was, I guess, just like the misunderstanding, the closed off dude. Um, yeah. I wonder if I should like start tracking the tropes that I find in these books. I don't know. We'll see. If you think of any other tropes that might have been included in here that I missed, mention them below for sure. So to end this video, I'm gonna spin the wheel again, and we're gonna do the next book. Um, Suggesting that I was gonna do one every week it was being way too generous. I'll aim for maybe every 2 weeks. But I don't know. It might be more realistic to shoot for 3. It takes me more time to write and record and then edit the video than it does to actually read the books themselves. I probably should have anticipated that, considering how small the books are. But anyway, we'll spin the wheel. Give me 1 second here. Okay, I picked a different wheel. I did a couple test spins on the last one a few days ago, and it picked the same book multiple times in a row. And considering there's 560 books on that list now, because I added another chunk of them when I went out and bought some more, um, I don't think it should be rolling multiple of the same one. So it feels kind of like maybe it's not exactly random. So we're gonna try this wheel instead and see what we get. All right. We got Moon over Montana, Montana Mavericks, number 46. I noticed that there's a lot of like cowboys in the collection that I got, so I'm not entirely surprised about this one. Montana Mavericks seems like a large series about cowboys. Okay, so this is the this is the page for Moon over Montana. It's by Jackie Merritt, and it says Linda Fioretti is a grown woman. She left Los Angeles and a lousy marriage to make a new life for herself in Rumor, Montana. And that means discovering just who she's become over the years: an artist, a teacher, or the kind of woman who falls in love at first sight. Carpenter Tag Kinsley has been hired to renovate her apartment, and when he swaggers into her home, Linda's pulse begins to hammer. From his kind words to his sexy smile, the single father's dangerous sensibility and tenderness are unnervingly attractive, almost enough to tear down her walls around her heart. There's gonna be kids in this book again. I hate kids books, but also a lot of them involve babies and stuff, so I guess I better get used to it. So, I guess that wraps things up for today. I'll be back in a couple weeks. I'm hoping for about 2 weeks with the next one. This one won't take quite so long because I don't have to make all the graphics for it and everything. I had to like set up all the star signs and spicy signs and stuff too. Um, you can stay up to date with what I'm doing in my Discord. You can join me when I live stream. I do it Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays on Twitch and here on YouTube and on TikTok as well. If you like this video, leave a like. It really helps me out. Subscribe, leave a comment. Any interaction helps me a lot. If you want to keep coming back, definitely hit the bell, as they say, I guess. If you've made it this far, why don't you tell me about what you've been reading in the comments, I love to hear about what other people are reading. What have you liked lately? What have you hated lately? Any new authors you like to share? I'm always looking for new authors. I hope you have a good day, and thank you for hanging out. Hopefully we'll see you again soon. Bye!